Hey everybody, Chris McDonald here. So every so often I see a discussion on this Facebook page about permits, NFPA, which is National Fire Protection Association, and talking with your local fire department or the authority having jurisdiction. Some background on myself. For the past 14 years or so, I have been a certified fire inspector for a state agency. Um, that's my day job. And for about 4 years or so, I've been involved in the flow arts, and I actually manufacture my own LED props. Um, so I'm kind of a good crossover reference that can hopefully help you to filter through some of this technical information and what to look for and that type of thing. Now, I can't speak to as far as what your local authority having jurisdiction, the fire department, or whoever might be fire department, fire inspector, fire chief, whoever you need to deal with. But I can kind of look at it from that perspective. So, working with your fire department, working with your fire inspector, with your fire chief, whoever that authority having jurisdiction is, some questions that you want to ask as you get into this process is what edition of NFPA 160 or other codes that are standards that they might be requesting of you to abide by, what edition are they using? And are there any local adopted codes, references, standards, changes to that code or to that standard rather that apply? Because you can look at the code, that standard NFPA 160, and not realize that there are additional things that you have to meet for that jurisdiction. That's why that's important. And thirdly, educate the person that you're dealing with politely, because from a fire inspector standpoint, I can tell you right now, before I got involved with the flow arts, I had no idea about any of this. But now I do, and I can tell you that unless your fire inspector, whoever that person is familiar with the process, they're not going to have an idea of what that process is, what you guys do, how you do it, the safeguards, and all of that other stuff. So educate them about what you guys do and how you do it, and the equipment used and the safeguards that you use and all of those parts and pieces, because then they're going to have a better understanding of the particulars of what you guys do and what from that standard is really applicable and what isn't. And so when you fill out the permit and you put not applicable for something, they're going to have a background of, or at least be able to ask better questions as to what is that, why it's not applicable. So now that we've gone through that basic stuff, navigating the codes. So you have two really organizations that produce consensus codes for building and fire. You have National Fire Protection Association, which is NFPA, which a lot of what we do is applied from. Or you have the ICC, which is the International Code Council. They're very similar, and some states adopt NFPA, some states adopt the ICC. So NFPA 160 you may have another, you might have the International Fire Code that you need to look into as opposed to NFPA 160. But we're going to focus on NFPA as opposed to the ICC primarily, because that's what I use when I'm doing my fire inspections. So first and foremost, there is a code cycle. Approximately every 3 years or so, NFPA produces a new edition of the code that then gets published. And then it's up to the local jurisdiction, whether it's federal, state, or local, to adopt that standard, either in its entirety or with variations. And they may decide that, you know, this has no pertinent value to our jurisdiction, so we're going to stay with the previous edition. So, for example, the state I'm in, which is New Hampshire, by law, we have to stay one code cycle back from the most current code, and that's for a bunch of different reasons, and really doesn't matter for our purposes why. So anyway, so that's why you want to find out what edition that code cycle is, or what edition the standard is, NFPA 160, because it may not be the 2021 edition. It might be the 2016. It might be the 2012. You know, so that's why you want to do that research, is that you know where to go when you want to look up something. So with that, I'm going to switch views and bring you onto the computer and show you how to actually access this code for free. Or the standard for free. So the first thing we need to do when we're going to pull up a NFPA code or standard and that we want to view is go to the National Fire Protection Association website, which is www.nfpa.org. And that's where all of their codes and standards live. And then from there, we can click on the Codes and Standards tab and go down to the list of NFPA codes and standards. Now you can also buy those codes and standards. But my suggestion is, unless you're really need to have that document purchased, go to the list, and that way you'll be able to view that document. In this case, NFPA 160, all of the codes and standards that NFPA publishes. And so we're looking for NFPA 160, which we scroll down, keep scrolling, and eventually we come to NFPA 160, standard for the use of flame effects before an audience. Now, in reading through this, sometimes it cross-references NFPA 140 as well. There is a mention in that. So we're going to go to NFPA 160. And now it has the option to buy, but we can also view this document. Now, this website will only allow you to view the document. You can't copy, you can't paste. So we can go to the free access, and it's going to, now we need to select the edition that we want, and this is where it becomes necessary to know what edition your fire department or your authority having jurisdiction is requesting for you to abide by in their permit system. So we're going to go, and it gives us the option of 2021, 2016, 2011, 2006. Some of these have a Spanish alternative as well, but apparently this one does not. Now you're saying, all right, well, there's 2021, 2016, 2011. You said that there was every 3 years. Well, that's the typical code cycle for this. In this case, this document is every 4-5 years, somewhere in that neighborhood. So we're going to go with the 2016 edition, and we'll do view, and here is, and we're going to proceed to that, and then it's going to say, do we agree? So we're going to agree, and here is your document, your standard, and here are all of those chapters that we can quickly go to, or we can do the table of contents right here. there's the table of contents. And then we can go page by page. And some important things about this, so it gives the background, the history of this, and which technical committees are involved, who's involved, all of that stuff. And so a couple of things. First thing is the application, and it tells you in that what it applies to. Now for our purposes, I'm going to switch over to my PDF version because I have access to it of this standard, and just because it's bigger and you can see it better. And so we were talking about what is applicable. And so before we get into that, first of all, there is the use of asterisks. Those are specifically for directing you to Appendix A to get additional information which is not enforceable as a standard. It just gives you background information, things to consider, and that type of thing. Brackets is extracted material from another standard or code. And it talks about Chapter 2 being its reference documents. And we'll go there in a second. So Chapter 1 is your administrative chapter. It gives you all the, the scope, who it applies to, what the application is, and what it does not apply to, which is right here. Standard shall not apply to the following. So you have what does apply and what does not apply, and then other things. But here's, for example, here's that asterisk, and in this version, I can click on this and it will take me to that piece. You have to remember what the piece is that you were looking at, but anyway, so it takes you to that piece, and it gives that information. So in this case, it's for information and guidance on ground-based effects in air shows, blah, blah, blah. And it talks about the International Council on Air Shows. But it also talks about the NFPA document that has additional information. So going back to administration. So that's the administration. It gives you some terms that you might need to be familiar with, or that your permit system might talk about. And then it talks about reference documents. So this standard will reference other NFPA codes and standards. And in this case, it references NFPA 10 for your portable fire extinguishers, NFPA 140, and that's the one that I already talked about, and then code for fireworks display. Now in this standard, for example, if you needed to have information from NFPA 10, which is the portable fire extinguisher standard, they're utilizing the 2013 edition. So that's, here again, it gets back to that edition, so you know where you need to go. And then after that, it gives you your definitions, so on and so forth. And then we get into the actual requirements. And here we can go to the table of contents. So it has your holding areas, your permit and approval requirements, and terms of installation, documentation of flame effects, use of flame effects, flame effect operator, system components, flame effect control systems and design, system installation and testing, fire protection provisions, and then your appendixes. So that, in a nutshell, is the standard that I see a lot of people talking about, but it's accessible to you, so you don't have to just wait for your fire inspector to say, I need this information. You can actually go and see what exactly is being required of you and what you're going to need to be able to provide for documentation and that type of thing. So I hope that has been helpful. And if you have any questions or you say, hey, can you clarify this piece in the code or standard? Obviously, like I said, I'm not your local authority having jurisdiction. So that would be the first person you really want to talk to. But if you're looking for some clarification or other things, feel free to send me a PM or contact me, and I'll be more than happy to assist in whatever way I can. All right, thanks, and have a fantastic day.